My name is Lena Brooks, and I was 36 years old the night my mother decided that keeping the family comfortable mattered more than protecting my child. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even argue. I just listened. Growing up, I learned early that silence was a skill. Not the peaceful kind, the survival kind. The kind you develop when you realize that speaking up only makes things worse, not better. In our house, conflict wasn't resolved. It was buried, smoothed over, pretended away. And if you were the one making it uncomfortable, you became the problem. So I learned to be easy. Easy daughter. Easy sister. Easy adult who never asked for too much. By the time I moved back in with my parents after my divorce, that habit was second nature. I told myself it was temporary, that I was doing what I had to do for my son, Noah. A roof. Stability. Family. What I didn't admit, what I refused to see, was how quickly temporary turns into invisible. I worked full-time. I paid rent, even when my mom waved it off in front of others like I was some charity case. I covered the internet bill because you need it for work anyway. I handled groceries more often than not. I scheduled appointments for my dad when he forgot, picked up prescriptions, fixed things around the house that no one else noticed until they stopped working. Still, in their eyes, I was just Lena. The one who came back. The one who needed help. My older sister Rachel never came back. She never had to. She married well, lived well, and visited just often enough to be praised for it. Her daughter, Mia, was 16 and carried herself like she knew the world would bend around her eventually. That Sunday night, we were all gathered in the dining room, the same narrow space that had hosted birthdays, holidays, and decades of unspoken resentment. My parents sat at opposite ends of the table. Rachel and her husband beside each other. Mia across from Noah. Noah was 9. Quiet. Thoughtful. The kind of kid who noticed things too early and apologized too quickly. I noticed him shrinking before anyone said a word. Mia had already commented on his hoodie. Too big, she said, like he was trying to hide. Then his glasses. Then the way he held his fork. Each remark landed softly, casually, like she didn't mean any harm at all. And that's what made it worse. By the time dinner was served, Noah barely looked up. Mia leaned back in her chair, phone glowing in her hand. She laughed at something on the screen, then glanced at Noah's plate. "Wow," she said lightly. "Are you really going to eat all that?" The room didn't go silent. It went still. Not shocked. Not angry. Just paused. Like everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Noah froze. His shoulders pulled inward, chin dipping toward his chest. I watched his fingers tighten around his fork, knuckles whitening, as if holding it was the only thing anchoring him to the table. I looked at Rachel. She didn't look back. I turned to my mother. She gave me the look. The one that said, "Don't start." The one that said, "You know better." The one that had kept me quiet my entire life. My father cleared his throat and reached for the salt, eyes already drifting toward the television murmuring in the other room. Something inside me shifted, not explosively, not dramatically. Just, decisively. I said Mia's name. Not sharply. Not angrily. Just enough to bring the attention back to the table. "That's not okay," I said calmly. "We don't comment on people's bodies." Mia blinked, surprised, like she hadn't expected to be noticed. "I was just joking," she said, rolling her eyes. Rachel sighed. "Lena, she didn't mean anything by it." And there it was. The familiar deflection. The smoothing over. The rush to comfort the person who caused the harm instead of the one who felt it. I felt something heavy press against my chest. 4 years' worth of swallowed words, held back for the sake of peace. "I've heard that before," I said, still calm. "Every time." Rachel stiffened. What's that supposed to mean? It meant everything. It meant the comments Noah came home quiet from. The way he stopped asking to sit next to Mia. The nights he pushed food around his plate and said he wasn't hungry. But before I could say any of that, my mother spoke. "Lena," she said sharply, "you're embarrassing her." I looked at her. Then, in a tone so firm it felt rehearsed, she said the words that changed everything. "You're not welcome back here until you apologize to your niece." She didn't look at Noah. She didn't ask how he felt. She didn't even hesitate. And in that moment, I understood something with absolute clarity. I had never been standing on solid ground here. For a moment after my mother said it, no one spoke. Not because they were shocked, but because, to them, it made sense. I felt Noah shift beside me. Not enough to draw attention. Just a small movement. His knee brushing mine under the table, his silent way of checking whether I was still there. I placed my hand over his without looking down. His fingers were cold. "Mom," I said quietly. She commented on his body. Rachel let out a sharp laugh. "Oh my God, Lena. You're acting like she committed a crime." "I'm saying it hurt him." "She's 16, Rachel snapped. "She doesn't think before she speaks." I waited. I waited for my mother to say something reasonable. Something fair. Something maternal. Instead, she crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair. "You didn't need to call her out like that," she said. "You could have pulled her aside later." Later. Always later. "Later doesn't help him right now," I replied. My father finally looked up from his plate. "Let's just calm down," he muttered. "It's just dinner." Just dinner. I felt something inside me hollow out. Not anger. Recognition. This wasn't new. This was a pattern. I thought about Noah last spring, coming home from a weekend visit quieter than usual. How he'd gone straight to his room and stayed there until bedtime. How, when I finally got him to talk, he told me Mia had laughed when he asked for seconds, said he didn't need them. Rachel had waved it off then, too. Kids tease. "Don't be so sensitive. You're projecting." I hadn't fought hard enough. I saw that now. Mia pushed her chair back with an exaggerated sigh. "Can we stop talking about this? It's making me uncomfortable." That word landed wrong. Uncomfortable. I looked at my mother again. She was already nodding. "Exactly," she said. "You're upsetting her." I stood up slowly. The movement drew everyone's attention, but no one spoke. My chair scraped softly against the floor. Noah looked up at me, eyes wide, not scared, just uncertain. "I'm not apologizing," I said calmly. Rachel scoffed. "So you're choosing this hill to die on?" "I'm choosing my son." My mother's jaw tightened. "Then you need to understand the consequences." I waited. "You can't stay here if you're going to cause this kind of tension," she said. "Not if you refuse to make things right." I glanced around the table. No one objected. No one defended us. No one even looked ashamed. That was when it hit me. I wasn't being kicked out for causing harm. I was being punished for disrupting comfort. I turned to Noah. "Grab your backpack." Rachel's eyes widened. "Lena, don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I said. "I'm leaving." My mother stood up. "You're really doing this?" I nodded. "Yes." We walked out without another word. The night air felt sharp against my skin as we crossed the driveway toward the small converted room we'd been staying in behind the house. The guest unit I'd been paying for every month, even though my parents never cashed the checks. A kindness they liked to remind me of, publicly. Inside, I packed quickly. Clothes. School things. documents, the essentials. Noah sat on the bed, silent, watching me. Are we in trouble? He asked finally. I stopped and knelt in front of him. No, I said gently. We're safe. He nodded, like he wanted to believe me. I didn't cry while we packed. I didn't shake. I felt focused, clear in a way I hadn't felt in years. When everything was ready, Noah curled up on the bed and fell asleep almost immediately, exhaustion overtaking him. I opened my laptop. One by one, I logged into the accounts tied to my name. The phone plan, disconnected. The internet, canceled. The streaming services, ended. The car insurance, updated. The car Rachel drove every day was still legally mine. I marked it inactive. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt finished. By morning, I signed a lease for a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. The landlord didn't ask many questions. A friend of a friend. No credit drama. Just paperwork and keys. By noon, we were moved in. By evening, my phone started buzzing. I didn't answer. For the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like relief. I was standing in the narrow kitchen of our new apartment, rinsing out a coffee mug that still smelled faintly of cardboard and fresh paint, when my phone lit up on the counter. Rachel. I didn't pick it up. I watched it ring until the screen went dark again, then flipped the phone face down and went back to unpacking. Noah sat cross-legged on the living room floor, lining up his books on a shelf we hadn't even mounted yet. He hummed softly to himself, a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. That mattered more than any missed call. By 1 o'clock, the messages started coming in. Lena, call me. This is ridiculous. Mom is upset. I read them without responding. At 2:30, my father called. That alone told me something was wrong. He never called unless something was broken or missing. I let it go to voicemail. At 3, Rachel tried again, this time from her work number. Then a neighbor. Then a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. By the time the sun dipped lower in the sky, my phone felt heavier just sitting there. I finally listened to the voicemails. The first was Rachel, sharp and irritated. What did you do? She demanded. The internet's down, my phone won't connect, and Mom says the power company is threatening to shut things off. The second was my mother. Her voice was tight, controlled. Lena, this isn't funny. We need to talk. No apology. No concern for Noah. Just urgency. The third was my father. He sounded tired. Your mom's upset, he said. You didn't need to take things this far. That one made me laugh. Not loudly. Just a short, surprised sound. This far. As if I'd crossed some invisible line by stepping away, while years of quiet cruelty hadn't counted at all. Noah wandered into the kitchen while I was still holding the phone. He glanced up at my face, reading it the way kids do when they've learned to watch adults carefully. Are they mad? He asked. I knelt in front of him. They're uncomfortable. He thought about that. That's different. I smiled. Yes, it is. That night, we ate takeout on the floor. The apartment echoed when we laughed. There were no footsteps overhead, no voices bleeding through walls, no tension humming under every sound. I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, the panic escalated. Rachel called 6 times before 10. When I didn't answer, she sent an email. Long, accusatory. Full of words like irresponsible and selfish. You can't just disappear and shut everything down, she wrote. We're family. Family. I stared at the word for a long time. By noon, my mother started calling back to back. She didn't leave messages anymore. Just silence. As if holding the line open might guilt me into answering out of habit. I didn't. By late afternoon, someone else tried, a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. "This is Jason," Rachel's husband said, his voice strained. "Look, things are getting complicated. The bills, the car, the insurance. We need to straighten this out. We need." That phrasing told me everything. They weren't worried about us. They were scrambling because the systems I'd quietly held together were unraveling. I pictured it clearly. Rachel standing in the kitchen, phone in hand, unable to log into accounts she'd never bothered to learn about. My mother tapping buttons, insisting something must be broken. My father pacing, frustrated but silent. Mia complaining about the Wi-Fi. Chaos, not emotional, but logistical. And that was the part they couldn't handle. By the third day, the tone shifted. Rachel left a voicemail that evening, her voice suddenly careful. Controlled. "Let's talk like adults," she said. "This has gone too far. You're making things harder than they need to be. Clear the air. Move on. Pretend." I didn't call back. Instead, I watched Noah spread his homework across the kitchen table. He worked without flinching every time a car passed outside, without glancing at the door as if expecting someone to come in unannounced. I realized then how much tension he'd been carrying. On the fourth day, my mother sent a letter. Not a text. Not an email. A letter. Inside was a short note written in her careful handwriting. "We all made mistakes. Please come home. Let's put this behind us." No mention of Noah. No apology. Just balance. As if harm and silence weighed the same. I folded the letter and set it aside. That night, Noah asked, "Are we going back?" I took a breath. "No." He nodded. "Okay." That was it. No questions. No fear. Kids know when the air is safer. By the end of the week, Rachel posted a vague quote on social media about betrayal and being hurt by people you trust. No names. No context. Just enough to paint herself as the victim. I blocked her. For the first time, I wasn't disappearing to keep the peace. I was choosing quiet on purpose. And that choice was already changing everything. By the second week, the chaos changed shape. The frantic calls slowed. The angry messages stopped. And in their place came something more calculated. Carefulness. I recognized it immediately. It was the same tone my mother used when she wanted something without admitting fault. The same voice Rachel used when she realized pushing harder wouldn't work. They were adjusting. The first sign came in the form of an email from my mother. Short. Measured. "We're worried about you. About Noah. We don't want this to affect him long term." I read it twice. Concern. Suddenly. Not for what happened, but for how it might look. I didn't respond. 2 days later, Rachel tried again, this time through a mutual friend. A woman I'd known since college, someone who had no idea what was really going on. "She's just overwhelmed," my friend said gently over the phone. "She says you're blowing this out of proportion." I thanked her for checking in and ended the call. It struck me how quickly the narrative shifted. First, I was dramatic. Then, I was irresponsible. Now, I was unstable. I watched Noah closely during those days. He slept through the night. He ate without hesitation. He laughed louder, asked more questions, stopped apologizing for things that weren't his fault. That was my answer. One evening, as I was folding laundry, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something in me knew who it would be. "Lena," my father said when I answered. His voice was softer than I remembered. We hadn't spoken directly since we left. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm okay." He paused. "Your mom's struggling." There it was. The familiar pull. the expectation that I would fix it. "I'm not coming back," I said calmly. "I know," he replied, and that surprised me. He told me things I hadn't expected to hear. That the house felt wrong without us. That things kept breaking and no one seemed to know how to fix them. That your absence was louder than your presence ever had been. "She shouldn't have said that," he admitted finally. "About the apology." I closed my eyes. It wasn't a full apology, but it was something. He told me Mia had been suspended from school for making a comment that crossed a line. Not the same words. A different target. Rachel had been furious. At the school, at the teachers, at everyone but her daughter. "She doesn't understand where it came from," my father said quietly. "But I think I do." We sat in silence for a moment. "I should have spoken up," he added. "A long time ago." After we hung up, I didn't feel relieved. I felt steady. That night, Noah asked if we could go to the park near our old house. "Not to see them," he said quickly. "I just like the swings there." We went. The park was mostly empty. The swings creaked as Noah pumped his legs higher and higher, his laughter ringing through the cool evening air. I watched him and realized something that made my chest tighten. He wasn't afraid here anymore. Without warning, he said, "Mia used to push me." I looked up sharply. "Not hard," he added. "Just enough." I waited. "I stopped trying to make her like me," he said after a moment. "A long time ago." That was when I understood how much he'd been carrying alone. A few days later, another letter arrived. This one was from Rachel. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't dramatic. She wrote that she should have protected Noah. That she chose comfort over confrontation. That she didn't know if I'd ever forgive her, but she needed me to know she finally saw it. I didn't reply. But I didn't throw it away either. Life kept moving. I got better at sleeping. At cooking dinner without bracing myself. At laughing without scanning the room. The final shift came quietly. One afternoon, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. It was Mia. Her voice was small. Uncertain. "I didn't mean to hurt him," she said. "I don't know why I say things like that. I'm trying to stop." I didn't call back. But I listened to the message again that night. Not because it fixed anything, but because it confirmed something important. Walking away hadn't destroyed anyone. It had exposed them. And for the first time, I wasn't rushing to make it easier. The third week felt unfamiliar. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing did. No calls in the middle of the night. No surprise messages designed to pull me back into old roles. No pressure disguised as concern. Just space. I hadn't realized how exhausting it was to constantly anticipate conflict until there was none. I woke up without my stomach tightening. I made breakfast without listening for raised voices. I left for work without mentally rehearsing defenses I might need later. Noah changed in small, steady ways. He stopped asking permission to take seconds. He stopped apologizing when he bumped into things. He stopped checking my face before speaking. One night, while I was doing dishes, he leaned against the counter and said, "You laugh more now." It wasn't a compliment, just an observation. He was right. At work, something shifted too. My supervisor pulled me aside one afternoon and told me I was being considered for a team lead position. Not because I asked, but because she noticed I kept things running smoothly even when no one was watching. The irony didn't escape me. I had always been capable. I'd just been invisible where it mattered most. That weekend, a small envelope appeared under our door. No return address. Inside was a note from my mother. The handwriting was shakier this time. "Please talk to us. This has gone on long enough. We need you. Not we miss you. Not we're sorry. We need you. I folded the note and set it aside without comment. Later that evening, Noah sat beside me on the couch, drawing quietly. After a while, he slid a piece of paper toward me. It was a picture of a small house with two stick figures standing in front of it. One taller, one smaller. Above it, he'd written, "Safe." My chest tightened. I realized then that this wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about preservation. A few days later, Rachel texted for the first time without accusation. "Mia started counseling," she wrote. "She asked for it." I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't respond immediately. When I did, it was brief. "I hope it helps her." That was it. I didn't offer advice. I didn't offer reassurance. I didn't volunteer myself as support. That role was no longer mine. The next message came from my father. "I should have protected him," he wrote. "And you." I read it twice. Then once more. It wasn't perfect. But it was honest. I didn't reply. Because healing doesn't always require dialogue. Sometimes it just requires distance. Noah settled into his new school faster than I expected. He made friends. He raised his hand in class. His teacher emailed me to say he was more engaged, more confident. I kept the email. One afternoon, while sorting through mail, I found something unexpected. A notice from the mortgage company. The house had been refinanced. I read the fine print carefully. My name had been removed. No explanation. No warning. Inside the envelope was a short handwritten note from Rachel. "No more weight on your shoulders. For real this time." I sat at the table for a long time holding that paper. Not because I felt relief, but because I felt something settle. Acknowledgement. That night, Noah asked if we could have pancakes for dinner. We did. They were uneven, slightly burned. Perfect. Between bites, he looked up and said, "I'm glad we didn't go back." I nodded. Me too. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for apologies. I wasn't hoping for understanding. I had something better. I had clarity. A month passed without drama. That alone felt strange. I didn't realize how much of my identity had been shaped by managing other people's emotions until there was no one left demanding anything from me. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was full. Full of mornings that started without tension. Full of evenings that didn't end in exhaustion. Noah thrived. He laughed the way children do when they feel safe, without checking the room first. He sprawled across the couch with his homework, asking questions instead of apologizing for not knowing the answer. He slept through the night, no sudden wake-ups, no whispered worries. One afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. It was Rachel. "I'm not calling to ask you to come back," she said before I could say anything. Her voice sounded different, less sharp, less defensive. "I just wanted you to know. Mia's been doing better. Therapy's helping. She talks about Noah sometimes. About wanting to be kinder." I listened. "I should have stepped in sooner," Rachel continued. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say that out loud." I thanked her. We didn't make plans. We didn't revisit the past. We didn't pretend anything was fixed. And for the first time, that felt honest. A week later, I ran into my parents at the grocery store. There was no confrontation. My mother looked older, smaller. She opened her mouth like she might say something, then closed it again. I nodded politely. So did she. And we walked past each other. It wasn't cold. It wasn't cruel. It was neutral. That night, Noah asked why we didn't stop to talk. Because we don't have to, I said. He smiled. I like that. Life continued. Quietly, steadily. I accepted the team lead position at work. Not because I needed validation, but because I finally believed I deserved it. I stopped over-explaining, stopped shrinking, stopped making myself smaller so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. One Sunday afternoon, Noah and I went to the park. The same swings, the same laughter. As he kicked his legs higher, he shouted, "Watch me!" And I did. Fully. Present. Unafraid. That night, as I tucked him into bed, he asked, "Do you think we'll ever live with them again?" I didn't hesitate. No. He nodded. Good. I turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment longer than usual, listening to his steady breathing. I thought about the version of myself that would have apologized just to keep the peace. The woman who believed silence was kindness. The mother who mistook endurance for strength. She was gone. In her place was someone quieter, but firmer. Someone who understood that peace isn't something you earn by sacrificing yourself. It's something you protect by walking away when necessary. I didn't go back. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood something I should have learned long ago. Being useful is not the same as being valued. And my child and I deserved more than comfort built on our silence. This time, choosing peace wasn't a phase. It was a boundary, and it was permanent.